I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to Candidates Forum. I am Denise Jones and this is Trenton Mullen. We will serve as the moderators for this evening's forum, which is a bipartisan effort that was organized to help inform and educate voters on candidates that will appear on the November 8th general election ballot. We want to take this opportunity to thank the Student Senate of Venango College for helping us with this event and also extend our appreciation to Venango College for providing the venue to hold the forum.
Tonight's forum will include an answer and question session for the candidates running for the office of representative in the General Assembly for the 64th District. We have provided a pen and paper in the table in the back to give those in attendance an opportunity to ask questions. If you have not done so already, please legibly write your questions on the paper provided, fold it, and place it in the basket on the table. One of the bipartisan committee members will retrieve these questions, then will be reviewed and given to us, the moderators, to ask each candidate. Regrettably, Scott Hutchison, who is the only candidate that is running for the office of Senator in the General Assembly for the 21st District, could not attend our forum this evening, as he has had another engagement. The only one of the candidates running for the office for the representative in Congress for the 5th District could attend this evening. Therefore, we will follow a different format for the public office by allowing the candidate 3 minutes to make a presentation. We trust the candidate will remain until the conclusion of the forum so that she may answer questions on a one-on-one basis from those in attendance.
So our plan was, at the very beginning, we were going to have that candidate come forward, but I don't believe she is in attendance yet. And so, because of that, we are probably then going to have to proceed with our forum for the 3 candidates for the representative for the 64th District. So, that is what we are going to do. We are going to have those 3 candidates come forward so we can proceed.
Thank you. What's the order of seating?
What if you just seat by the way that you are on the map?
Yeah.
I don't know how that is. How is it? I'll sit at the end. I don't mind. John. Yeah.
You're second?
No, I'm first.
You're first. Okay, so you want to...
So you're here? Sure.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, you want me over here?
1, 2, 3.
Okay. Well,
I'm sorry.
You didn't drink my water, did you?
I didn't
I
touch
the water.
I did slip something in it. You don't mind. Yeah.
Depends.
Nothing good.
Welcome, candidates. This session for the office of representative in the General Assembly for the 64th District will include 5 questions, possibly more. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes for an opening statement, during which we ask that you introduce yourself, state your qualifications for this office, and why are you running for this specific public office. You will be given 2 minutes to respond to each question. The timekeeper is located directly in front of you, providing you with the declining time intervals and a final stop sign. We will begin with the candidates as their names will appear on the November ballot. So, Mr. Cluck.
Cluck. Cluck. Look, it's Cluck.
Look,
That's all right.
we'll begin with you for opening.
All right, first I want to thank the Venango County Republican and Democratic Party for co-sponsoring this event, and thank the moderators and everyone for all of the hard work that they have put together, or to do to put together this event. A little bit about myself. I was born and raised in Venango County. I've lived here all my life. I graduated from Clarion University with a bachelor's degree in elementary education, later from Edinburgh University with a master's in school administration. During my time that I was here at Venango, I served on the Student Senate as well. Currently, I'm working for the Oil City School District. This is my 24th year as a third grade teacher. I'm at 7th Street School right now. There I also serve as the lead teacher. One of the reasons that I'm running for this office is because I believe that the citizens of the 64th District deserve representation. I think that we need someone that will vote bipartisanly in an effort to serve all of the citizens of the district, not just ones from a particular political party. One of my opponent's family members has commented that I'm a one-trick pony, and I do want to tell you that I am a one-trick pony. My one trick is going to be serving the residents of Venango and Butler counties to the very best of my ability. As a teacher, education plays a very important role in my decision to run for this office. Our students and our teachers are faced with Keystone exams, PSSA exams, the new Common Core, all of which have had a detrimental effect on the education system. We need someone who has an education background making decisions regarding education, not someone who's a lawyer or a banker. Another factor influencing my decision is family-sustaining jobs. As I look around the state, there are other areas where jobs are growing and abundant, and here we seem to be left behind in that job growth. So we need someone that's going to push for job growth.
Thank you. We're working on the timekeeper.
Oh, I was looking. Wasn't sure where. Yeah. I kept looking around.
And next on the opening statements, we'd like to ask Mr. James.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the turnout, and thanks to all the folks that are wearing the red, white, and blue. It's good to see. I'm the incumbent. I am a conservative, moderate to conservative, and was actually interested in politics all the way back into high school. So I have spent a lifetime working for other candidates, sometimes successfully, sometimes not. And an opportunity came up 4 years ago for me to run for this office. I decided to do so. After 20 years in banking and then 20 years as a financial consultant, I thought these were skills that would transfer well to Harrisburg, and I think they do. Since I've been down there, I've formed coalitions with both the Republicans and the Democrats. I have endorsements from 6 different groups, including NRA, FOA, Firearm Owners Against Crime, Pro-Life Federation, Pennsylvania Chamber of Commerce, Rural Electric Co-ops, and I will continue to work with those groups as well as others to bring good things back to the county. In terms of some of the jobs that we're talking about here, we do seem to be in a bit of a tailspin, and a lot of those decisions are being made by corporate headquarters that are far away from here. The best we could do at this point is continue to offer training, which we do, and look for other opportunities to bring small businesses into town.
Thank you, Mr. James. And now, for opening statements from Mr. Bagdis Canning.
I am Michael Bagdis Canning, and I'm a retired school teacher as well. But that's not my most important qualification. My most important qualification is that I am husband to Karen, father to 4, and grandfather to 5. I spent 36 years in the classroom. I taught reading to delinquent boys at George Junior Republic. I served also in my union. I was vice president, I was president, and I was also in the building rep. I'm a concerned citizen, and what that means is that I've served my community. I've been on the Cherry Valley Borough Council since 1989, And I have been the vice president of the Cherry Valley Borough Council for at least the last decade. It's also my role as concerned citizen that got me into this race. I'm green. My wife Karen is a Democrat. And in April, she got a mailer from Mr. James, the incumbent Republican, asking her to write him in as the Democratic nominee for the office that he currently holds. What Mr. James was doing was trying to short-circuit the electoral process, limit the choices we had. And I, at that point, decided that that was not where I wanted this race to go. So I got into the race, and then John got into the race about the same time. But the fact that there was no choice was not the worst problem. The worst problem was that we had 96 out of 203 seats statewide that were in just that condition. If we don't have choices, we don't have a democracy. Now, I keep hearing over and over again that Pennsylvanians are upset with the direction their government's going. And yet, 91% of incumbents are elected. Why is that? You and I were taught in school that we get to pick our representatives. But that's not the real story. The real story is that our representatives pick us. They create districts that are safe for the incumbents.
Thank you. Now, we are now going to begin with the prepared questions that we have. And our question number 1 is to all 3 candidates. What do you believe we must do across the region to ensure a solid growth-oriented future, especially in light of our projected population decline? And we will start with Mr.
Look.
It's usually my name that gets screwed up.
That's all right. One of the things that I think that we need to focus on is having the leaders in both private and the public sectors understanding that communication and cooperation are necessary for a vibrant future in the 64th District. One of the things that I would like to do is institute a 64th District lead team concept. Through this approach, community leaders will be invited to meet monthly to discuss priority projects and their challenges and possible solutions. This lead team concept will hopefully create an efficient and an effective way to remain on the offensive rather than the defensive. I mean, we've had situations where most recently Joy Global has left our area. Additionally, Orchard Brands, which used to be Blair, left the area, and the PNC Bank call center, all in the last few years. And if we were working proactively rather than reactively, we may be able to keep some of those jobs here in Venango County. Job creation is going to be very difficult, but keeping the jobs that are here then is even more important because it's going to be so difficult to create new jobs. We also need to recognize the need to develop the southern tier of Venango County. Emlenton and the areas there, the northern part of Butler County, they are all very close to Interstate 80, and the transportation infrastructure already exists there, where here in the central part of the county, we need to beef up that transportation infrastructure. So I think our best hope for development is to start in the south and work our way up.
Could you repeat the question?
I sure will. What do you believe we must do across the region to ensure a solid growth-oriented future, especially in light of our projected population decline?
Well, one thing that drives me nuts about our current economic policy is that we have this thing called AFDC. That's what I call it anyhow, Aid for Dependent Corporations. And what that looks like is this. Our government invests, that's what they say, in these corporations. For instance, there's a cracker plant in Beaver County. They've got $1.6 billion in tax breaks and rebates for barrels of ethane. It works out to about $160,000 for every employee they're going to eventually have in that plant. What could we do here in Venango County and in northern Butler County with $160,000 per year for the next 25 years. We need to invest in local business. Now, Representative James just talked about trying to lure in local businesses. Why don't we have that base here? I'm sure we do. We have a lot of talented people in this area. Why aren't we investing in them? So, I would like to see the state government incentivize a bunch of things like credit unions. Why aren't we investing in incentivizing community banks? Farmer-consumer cooperatives and CSAs. Why aren't we working with our farmers to make it more profitable to be farmers? This area used to feed itself. Why aren't we working to make that happen? That's real, true food security. How about community health clinics and cooperatives there? Again, the health crisis is, I'll talk more, I hope, about Obamacare and how it's a welfare program for the insurance companies, but we can be investing here on the local area. Why don't we have consumer-owned cooperatives, and why isn't the state incentivizing that? And how about worker-owned cooperatives? We had a huge loss here when Joy moved out.
I'm sorry, your time is up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We have an opportunity here in actually all over Pennsylvania, but in particular in western Pennsylvania, north and western Pennsylvania, to develop gas resources. And there's enough gas underneath our feet here to probably heat the entire United States for 100 years, maybe more. Maybe as much as 200 because we can't be sure. We have a problem right now in getting that gas to market, which is why local gas products now sell something like $1.20, where on the open market it's more than twice that down in Texas and so forth. So we need to support the small businessman who's drilling both gas and oil wells. I think we do that. We also need to continue to support persons who are engaged in agriculture. Agriculture is the largest employer in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. It's 1 out of every 7 jobs, and I think we try to do that too. Pennsylvania preferred and so forth. And with regard to that Shell cracker plant, I think for western Pennsylvania in particular, that's going to be a real godsend. When I was in college in economics, which was my major, at that time it was about 3.5 spin-off jobs for every job in manufacturing or basic industry. But with this Shell plant, I've heard that that number is probably twice or maybe even 3 times that. So that's 6 to 10 support jobs growing up alongside of the Shell plant. And much of that has to do with the plastics, which all of us purchase every day. They're this glass of water. The plastic industry has really thrived and has a great chance of bringing a lot of prosperity back to western Pennsylvania.
Thank you. Now for our second question. What is your position on state-level pension reform? And this time we're going to start with Mr. Baggins-Canning.
Excellent. So the pension crisis, we've heard a lot about it lately. When Karen and I bought our car, we put a budget together because we know that the cars break down. And as we owned the car a bit, I looked at our bank account, and my share of the maintenance costs, I decided, you know what, we got plenty of money in the bank, I'm not going to put it in there. Karen continued to put hers in there. Lo and behold, a few years down the road, the car started acting up, and I realized we had to fix the car. And I looked at our bank account, and we didn't have enough money anymore. So I said to Karen, you know that money you've been saving to put our granddaughter Lachlan in college? Well, we're going to have to take that out. Our pension crisis came about because Democrats and Republicans decided that we needed a tax break, and so the local districts stopped making their contributions. The teachers continue to make their contributions the whole time. And now, all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, it's been going on for quite a while, we have a pension problem. And who's to blame? I keep hearing things like, oh, the teachers, their salaries are so high. And no. The problem is that this emphasis on tax breaks is bogus. Every time I hear a politician talk about a tax break, I reach for my wallet because I know it's going to cost me in the end. We keep deferring the problem. We keep sending it down the road. This is a problem that shouldn't have happened, but it did, and it was irresponsible for both Democrats and Republicans to do that.
All right, thank you. Mr. James?
Yes. Since I've been in Harrisburg, there's been a group of people working on pension reform every year. When we get up to the finish line, we don't quite seem to be able to get the ball across the goal line. Most recently, yesterday, a pension bill got support from 99 out of 203 members, which is not enough to pass. You have to have 102. And so the bill did not run. It would have been a very good bill. There is recognition by everyone down there that we have a problem. It's now up to, depending on whose numbers you listen to, 60 to 63 billion deficit in the teachers and the state workers pension plan. It's a two-part problem. We have to figure out a way to stop making it worse, and then we have to figure out a way to pay it all back. But it's been tried in the courts many times, and every judge says, Pennsylvania, it's a contract. So the pension reform, which did not pass yesterday, would have protected every retiree and everyone who is currently employed. Beginning in January of 2018, new hires would have entered a different type of stacked hybrid or a pure defined contribution plan. The stacked hybrid, very briefly, is part of a defined benefit plan or a pension, as we mostly know it, and a defined contribution. A 401k plan is 100% yours, so if you contribute to it, thank you, if you contribute to it, it's transportable. So today you work in Pennsylvania, but in 5 years you have an opportunity to move to Missouri. Those monies follow you. Defined benefit plan, that's not the case. So there was protections built in on that, and the new contributory plan actually would have begun to kick in to paying back part of the $63 billion, excuse me, in about a year.
Thank you. Mr. Klug?
Well, I was going to see if you were going to try to say it again.
I wrote it down.
Rhymes with look.
Ryan, look.
Look,
Yes.
I got it.
Well, the pension bill that most recently, yesterday, had failed, doesn't begin to address the real pension problem. The real pension problem is that when this is underfunded and we start putting people into a 401k type of pension, then the funding that's going into the current system is no longer going to be going in there. So in the short term, it seems like that might be a good idea. But 30 years down the road, when there are several 100,000 people receiving retirement benefits and no one putting any money into the plans, then the pension system is going to go belly up then. The legislators currently aren't concerned with that because in 30 years they will no longer be in office. So they are not worried about putting people into a 401k and really ruining further the pension system. Now, the whole pension problem started back in 2000 when PSERS was 123% overfunded. At that point, they started offering people the chance to have an extra 0.5% multiplier. They offered early retirement incentives so that the pension system would no longer be overfunded. Then 2 series of economic downturns caused the pension system to be underfunded. All the while that this was going on, the state was not contributing their part to the pension system. So for 10 to 12 years, the state contributed $0 to the pension system. And that's where the problem is now. Because if that money would have been contributed, we would have it plus the interest, and the pension system would not be nearly as broke as it is today.
Thank you. Our third question. In light of the rise of opioid addiction and abuse, especially locally, what suggestions can you provide to address this problem and finding the financial support to do so? And we will begin with Mr. Backus.
I started the last one.
I'm sorry, Mr. James.
I mean, I don't mind going first, but I'm pretty sure I did last.
It is Mr. James. Could you please start?
Thank you. Yeah, there are already some measures being taken, and I'll just quickly review a few of those and then tell you about what's coming down the road. We have a physician general named Dr. Levine, who in concert with our governor is very interested in saving lives. And we've talked a little bit about this, and it's in the newspaper frequently. We're now up to 7 Pennsylvanians per day dying from opioid or heroin overdoses. Pretty unacceptable and not particularly Christian to let that continue in that fashion. So the governor and the legislature agreed that we need to put more money into that, into trying to resolve this issue. And what we've discovered is it takes about 12 to 14 concentrated months of treatment. And you can't just cure the heroin problem by pumping methadone or Vivitrol or any of the various drugs that are out there. It takes an education. And so we're heading in that direction. 17 new treatment centers opened up last month. There's another 24 or 25 on the block to open up in January, all around the state. Some of us are a little concerned that, gosh, they're going to open one here. I don't know if we want to do that. Well, here's the thing. If a heroin addict or an opioid addict wants to get cured, wants to get free of this monkey on his back, right now he has to drive all the way to Meadville, possibly Butler, Pittsburgh, depends on where he's going, to get that treatment every day, because we don't hand out 30 or 60 or 90 days worth of pills. You get a daily dosage to control your heroin. Okay.
Well, I applaud the legislature and the governor on the $34 million and the $18 million in federal matching money that they're putting into the governor's centers for excellence across the state. I do think that we also need to look at this at the local level also. Some of you out in the audience here are members of the Venango County Drug Task Force, and Venango, I have been to a couple of those meetings, and it seems that our local county task force is really cutting edge. They're leading the way in helping people and fighting this epidemic. In addition to opening these treatment centers, I think that the state also needs to fund the local task forces, because they may be able to prevent people from needing the treatment center. They may be the help before the treatment takes place. So let's keep the Centers for Excellence going, but also let's come down at the local level, because let's face it, the problems here in rural Venango County are probably very different than in Allegheny County, than in Philadelphia, and the people here know what they're doing, and let them continue to do their good work.
Good.
She got your name right.
Every time.
Yeah, I know it.
And it's a mouthful. If we had a war on drugs, we lost it. There's no doubt about that. Our problem for 30 years has been that we've criminalized addiction. And I'm glad we're moving away from that model. But what about prevention in the first place? Why do people turn to drugs? Well, one of the main ones is that people are self-medicating. They have pain. I spent some real quality time with a young man a few weeks ago, an opioid addicted young man, and we had a conversation about why. Lack of opportunity is what he talked about. He didn't have a job, couldn't get a job, had a big student debt that he had to pay, and turned to drugs. Portugal has a very interesting system with their drugs. They had a drug problem very much like ours, very severe, and they moved away from the criminal thing to a treatment thing where they actually they treat people in the community like they're valued members of the community. Every person who is found with drugs, instead of being charged, they are put into a program where they are given job training, where they are given counseling if need be, a whole bunch of different things. And Portugal's drug problem has dropped drastically.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I am so sorry. I thought that
Keep
I was
going.
your-
No,
your
I'm
stop.
good. I lost my train of thought anyway. It'd take me 30 seconds to get back to it.
With
I am so sorry.
that segue, we're going to move on to the portion of the evening where we take the questions from the audience. And our first one from the audience is, gentlemen, why do you feel consolidation of districts would be beneficial? And do you feel that it would give rural areas like ours less representation compared to Pittsburgh and the Philadelphia areas? And we're going to start with Mr. Klug.
Well, consolidating our legislative districts the plan that's out now would reduce the number of legislators from 203 to 151. That's 25%. We can save then 25% of the legislative budget, which is currently $263 million. So we would be saving about $65 million, and that is a real savings year after year. It's not like liquor store privatization or any of the gimmicky things that we say, well, we're gonna save this money this year, but next year we'll have to find money again. That's $65 million that we're going to have every year. And I know that my opponent is going to say that that's going to put 84,000 people as opposed to around 63,000 people in each district, and you're going to have to cover a wider area. I already have a plan in this district where I have made arrangements with Emlenton Borough and Pleasantville to put satellite offices there, where Emlenton Borough we would be 2 days a week and 1 day a week in Pleasantville, where that will come at no additional cost. The borough councils there have already offered that space to have representative services. So we can truly save money by cutting the legislature.
Thank you. Mr. Magus-Kennedy?
I think this is probably one of the few times that Representative James and I are going to agree in that I think that the legislature needs to stay the same size for a number of reasons, but the most important one is the Green Party is very much into grassroots democracy, and we believe that people in government should be very familiar with the people that they represent. Now, unfortunately, that's not the case. Even with districts as small as they are, I find it really hard to believe that the decisions that are made in Harrisburg reflect what you and I need and want. So I would say, at this point, let's make government more responsive to the needs of people, and let's not worry so much about what it costs for the legislature, but let's make our government responsible. And along those same lines, it's upsetting to me, I guess, when I think about the fact that we have about 57% of these state offices right now where people aren't running. So we, as citizens, also have a responsibility to become part of our government. things that happen in Harrisburg wouldn't happen if we were more engaged.
Thank you. Mr. James?
District 64, which is the one you all live in, is consistently in one of the top 5 to 8 offices in total business produced between its constituents in Harrisburg. This is year after year. That means people actually walk into the office with issues, problems. Could be veterans, could be license issues, any number of paperwork type oriented things. Right now, this district covers 790 square miles, give or take a mile. I don't know what the new numbers would look like. But in order to properly represent those people, you would almost have to have another office. What you will find from Harrisburg is neither the Democrat nor the Republican leadership is willing to spend a lot of extra money on offices, and in fact, both teams are consolidating, not expanding. It's nice if you can get a free one. But representation is the issue. So we have consistently outperformed. I have some of the greatest staff. I mentioned in the previous forum, the combined experience of my staff is about 54 years. I have 2.5 people here in Venango County and a half person in Harrisburg. They're fabulous. I guarantee you, whatever your problem is, they've heard something similar to it before, and they can help resolve it. I would hate to lose any of them. I hope they'll stay with me next term. And
Ain't happening.
yeah. And I think, well, that's enough. We do need to keep the legislature, I believe, where it is. I guess on a funny note, from the House, we sent this bill over, and we also sent a companion bill on the Senate, and they wouldn't shrink their own size. So no shrinkage in the Senate.
All right, so we have another question from the floor. It's kind of, I'm going to try to put them together because there's similar questions. One is, why does PA have America's largest full-time legislative, and what can be done about this problem? And please explain your position on term limits for legislators and the per diem rate. So can you address both of those? That Pennsylvania has America's largest full-time legislators, what can be done about that? And can you explain your position on term limits for legislators and their per diem rate? And we are starting with Mr. Baggis-King.
I guess I really don't see a difference between that question and the one that came before it. The first part, depending how, and I would stick with my...
Well, the per diem and maybe...
Well, the per diem, it's the second part. Yeah, I understand that part. Which actually brings me to something. I guess I haven't talked much about this, but Karen and I live a very frugal life, okay? And if I was elected, I would work for the median income of a family in Venango County, which is about $46,000. And I would forego the per diem. I don't think that our representatives should be much different than the people they represent. So I don't know where to go with that answer, except for I just, the first part I get. The second one I don't know what to do with it.
What about the term limits part?
I'm against term limits, but again, I will guarantee that I will term limit myself. This is not a job that I wanted to take. My goal is to build a movement where people get involved in their government, and they are the ones in charge. Grassroots democracy is where it's at.
Okay, thank you. Mr. James.
Each of us up here currently have a life. When you give up that life to go to Harrisburg roughly half the time, because the other half is spent here in the district, you have to live somewhere. A tent doesn't really make it because they have winters too. You have to eat. There's wear and tear on your vehicle. I put a little over 30,000 miles on my vehicle last year. So getting some of those expenses back to offset those costs makes sense. I think the current per diem rate's $175 for a 24-hour period down there. What?
It's 185.
Okay, thanks. Just got a $10 raise. I don't have any particular problem with that, and nobody's getting wealthy from per diems. As far as term limits, I said this one before too, nobody who starts a job has full knowledge of how that job works on day one. And there's a lot of moving parts in Harrisburg, and it takes a while to figure out what's going on. If you term everybody out after whatever the number is, 10 years or what have you, then everybody is pretty much a freshman or a sophomore, and they don't have the institutional knowledge. And some of you may take umbrage at that, but you absolutely have to have people that are down there that understand how the system works or nothing gets done.
I'm going. I am in favor of term limits, and there could be ways to address having everybody be new by having a rotating schedule of which legislators are up for election in particular years, instead of having all 203 or all 151 when the legislature gets reduced up for election the same year. The terms could go on a rotating basis. So half of the legislature would be replaced each year rather than the entire legislature. Then you would never really run into the problem where you don't have people there who know what they're doing. The term limits, in addition, could also help to curb some of the costs with the legislative pension system. If people are limited to a 10-year term or a 12-year term, they're not going to have the opportunity to build up huge pensions that are going to be a drain on the legislative pension system, which, by the way, is has a larger liability than PSERS on a yearly basis. So I am in favor of term limits. As far as the per diem, I understand you're going to have additional costs as the legislator for lodging that you would not incur at home. But I'm going to eat whether I'm at home or whether I'm in Harrisburg. So I don't need extra money to eat while I'm in Harrisburg because I would be doing the same thing here, most likely. I mean, look at me. Of course I'm going to be eating. So I believe that the salary that the legislators make should be more than enough to cover food expenses, and therefore you don't need per diems as large as they are.
All right. Thank you, sir. Our next question, which Mr. James will start with from the audience, is how do you plan to help the middle class in the 64th? Jobs, business, taxes.
Well, in Pennsylvania, I guess in reverse order, in Pennsylvania, those of us who are enjoying W-2 wages, i.e. we're making earned income, pay 3.07%. And that's across the board. And that's likely to remain where it is, absent any additional pressure from the administration down there, which we're kind of anticipating we're going to get next February. My intention is to continue on the path that I've taken, and that is to fight to keep those taxes where they are, not increase them. I feel we need to give the economy a chance to grow and help us grow out of these problems. In terms of new jobs in this area, we kind of covered that before. I'm fully supportive of folks in the oil and gas industry, fully supportive of drilling, fully supportive of pipelines. And I have worked, as I mentioned before, with the Pennsylvania Chamber of Commerce and the local chambers of commerce too. Right, Dottie? And we'll continue to do that to try to support small business.
Thank you. And Mr. Luke?
It's okay. Just say, hey, you. Next. One thing that I think we need to do is look at an increase in the minimum wage. There are 6,300 people in Venango County alone who have minimum wage jobs. Raising the minimum wage is going to help all of those 6,300 people. There used to be an opportunity for people. You'd start off at a minimum wage job, and you could work your way through the system until you got a higher wage. That opportunity really doesn't exist anymore. So people who are making minimum wage are living at poverty level. So one thing that we need to do is definitely look at an increase in the minimum wage. Previously, I also talked about with jobs with the lead team concept, so that we need to be more proactive than reactive in Venango County, in the 64th District, on job creation and job retention. With the income tax rate, the income tax could go up, and we could exempt the first $30,000 in income. The bottom 99% of the people in Venango County have an income of $31,800 a year. If we exempted the first $30,000 in income, that would pretty much make those people not have to pay any income tax. When the rate goes up, the top 1% of Venango County who are making $419,000 a year would be making up that difference in the state budget.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Bagus Canning.
Wow, you guys are good. Go to my website, mike4pa64.com, and I will answer the questions about taxation and the question about the middle class. But I cannot let this fracking thing go. This is where my life's been for the last 4 years. Representative James talks about how fracking can... Well, it is. I'm on the question. He brought it up, and I'm going to stay with it. He talks about how fracking can help with jobs. And just today, Pennsylvania's largest medical group, the Pennsylvania Medical Association, came out with a recommendation that Pennsylvania go to a moratorium. Now, why in the heck would the doctors do that? Let me give you a few reasons. Johns Hopkins found if you live within close proximity to a fracking site, you are liable to have low birth weight. The University of Pennsylvania found if you live within a mile of a frack site, you are liable to have a problem pregnancy. The University of Pennsylvania found that if you live within proximity, 1 mile of a frack site, you are likely to be more likely to be admitted for cardiac problems. If you live within a mile of a frack site, again, this just last week, Johns Hopkins found childhood leukemia. Now, your jobs do not give you the right to poison children, to make people sick, to give them heart attacks. I'm sorry. Fracking is not the answer. Fracking also has been found to be related to water contamination and air contamination. Jobs need to be found somewhere else. I can go into it somewhere else. One way is a big investment in renewables. The Carlisle School District in central Pennsylvania in 2009 put in a 5-acre solar array, and it's paid for itself.
Would you support a school choice voucher program allowing parents the best choice of education for their children? And we will start with Mr. Cook.
Thank you. I absolutely would not be in support of a voucher system for school choice. The Pennsylvania Constitution provides for public education. Our tax dollars pay for public education, and that's the only thing we should be spending our tax dollars on.
I agree with everything John said. We need to be putting money into our education system. The state has a smaller and smaller contribution over the last several years. we're going to hear about how they raised the contribution. But if you look back 40 years, we are underfunding education. Education is an investment in our future. Our children need that investment. And this whole idea that we're going to put money, take money out of education and give it to something else, like charter schools and those kind of things, show me first that they work. And then let's talk about investing in these choices.
Too bad there aren't any charter school moms here to tell you how they do work in certain instances.
Show me the research.
I don't know the reason that all the moms and dads who make the decision to put their child in a charter school, I don't know what those reasons are. Some of them are safety, some of them are probably economic, some of them are probably social. Be that as it may, this is still America, and we do get a choice. Much has been said about the financing of charter schools and cyber charters and that sort of thing. And they're still new enough that there's probably a few rough edges that need to be ironed out. But we're doing that in Harrisburg now. I believe we've gotten to the bottom of the contribution that's made to retirement plans for teachers of charter schools. And there's going to undoubtedly be another movement in the first quarter of 2017 for more charter school reform, more transparency, better accounting, ethics issues, nepotism issues. So all of these things are being looked at. To deny a parent the opportunity to educate their child in the fashion that they see fit, that's the same as saying, I'm sorry, you can't homeschool your child, or you're not allowed to go to parochial school. Thank you.
You are allowed to go. You paid for it. I'm a product of parochial school, and our family paid for it.
And my children were all educated at home until 6th grade, and we paid for it as well.
Right there, those two people paid for me to go to parochial school for my 13 years of grade school and high school.
All right. Our last question from the audience. Our legislator claimed to pass state budgets that hold the line on tax increases. Why don't we hear anything about taxes being pushed to the local level to compensate for bad state budgets? We're going to start with Mr. Bagus.
How many of you think that you pay the exact right amount of taxes? Not a hand in the house. We've been hearing about tax cuts for 40 years, at least. And I call the Democrats and the Republicans the James Gang, because they talk about cutting taxes for the middle class, or they talk about cutting taxes for the job creators. And every time they talk about it, I already used this line, I'll use it again though, when they talk about tax cuts, I reach for my wallet because I know I'm going to get ripped off, and this is exactly what the situation is. We underfund, or we give people tax breaks on the state level, and then who has to pick up the ball? The local municipalities. You and me end up picking up the ball. We have, for instance, we have Oil City, I just read, $180,000 deficit this year. Butler City is going broke. Why? The tax break is eroded, we don't have jobs, and we're talking about cutting taxes. Like that's going to fix the problem. We need to invest in our communities, we need to invest in our state, and let's quit with this tax cut stuff because it doesn't work.
Mr. James.
Yeah, would you repeat that, please?
Our legislators claim to pass state budgets that hold the line on tax increases. Why don't we hear anything about the taxes being pushed to the local levels to compensate for bad state budgets?
Well, I admit I don't understand that exactly. We have managed to hold the line on taxes, so I'll agree with that. In terms of local responsibility, let's talk for a moment about something we all hate to do. In September, we write a check out for our school property tax. Well, nobody likes to do it, but we do it because we support education. Now, on this end of the state, our education system is protected by what we call hold harmless, which very simply is next year's school budget is guaranteed to not get fewer dollars than was received the year before. It's actually working to our benefit because our school population is shrinking. Down east, exact opposite. Their economy is robust, their population is growing, their school population in particular is growing. So while our local schools get somewhere between 51, 52%, up to as much as 71% back from Harrisburg, down east they're getting 12 to 20%. So I'm glad we're not in that situation. In terms of pushing monies back down here, I think we try to do that every day. That's the part of the conversation or the question I don't quite get.
I think the tax burden is what they were getting at.
Okay.
So the question was, or the feeling was, that we're paying too much in property taxes, and I think I've just answered that. So.
I think when we look at the state budgets, when the state budget doesn't provide enough funding for local school districts, then the local school districts raise taxes. 6 local school districts raised taxes in the 64th district this year because they didn't have enough money or enough funding from the state budget. So if I'm understanding the question correctly, then we're saying when the state budget, why are the legislators saying they're holding the line on taxes when truly they're not? Because we're paying more in local taxes while they're holding the line on state taxes. If the state would raise the tax and distribute the money in a fair way to local school districts, then the local school districts would no longer have to raise their property taxes, which is happening here on a regular basis. Another issue is last year's budget was passed with a $1.3 billion deficit. So they passed the budget not knowing where that $1.3 billion would come from. One thing that I want people to know is I will never vote to pass a local budget or a state budget that is not balanced.
So thank you very much, all of you. We will now give each one of you 2 minutes for a closing statement. And I believe that we are starting with Mr. Baptist-Canning.
Well, thank you both for getting my name right every single time. Karen, I think that's the first time that ever happened. If you're old enough, I'd like you to think back to what this area looked like 40 years ago. Think about Venango and Butler County. And if you're not old enough, then take a look at the main streets in Oil City and Franklin. And I think what you're going to see is evidence of thriving local economies. When I was growing up, the sky was the limit. Jobs were easy to come by. Education, college was affordable. And our schools were the envy of the world. Families could make it on one paycheck. And neighborhoods were neighborly. Those days are gone. Our cities are rotting, and cities are having to scrape funds together just to make ends meet. Our young people graduate college with crippling debt and often face a bleak job future. Our schools are underfunded, and if people are lucky enough to have a job, their wages haven't kept up with inflation. Last year was the first year in 40 years that the middle class income ticked up just a bit. And why was that? Because of the $15 minimum wage, among other things, that was adopted in some places. Our communities are stressed and racked by unemployment, drug addiction, and poverty and transience. We don't have people staying in neighborhoods anymore because there's no jobs here. So how do we get here? Einstein is often credited with saying, insanity is continuing to do the same thing and expecting different results. Well, Democrats and Republicans are captured by the rich and the corporations. They are looking out. They say they're looking out for you, but they're not. They're looking out for their masters. The Green Party is the only real party for change. It's the only real party that speaks for the workers. It's the only real party that speaks for farmers.
Your time is up, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. James.
Thank you. Thanks for everybody coming tonight as well. Since being in Harrisburg, I have been fortunate enough to be put on several committees, including Veterans Affairs Committee. It's a very good bipartisan committee, and most of the guys and women in there are very agreeable about helping veterans. We do that at our office too. We have a veterans VA representative from Erie down once a month. They're always very busy. We'll continue to do that. I'm on local government committee. Local government includes boroughs, townships, third-class cities, everything that we have here. So at this juncture, we continue to try to reduce the amount of legislation that affects everybody locally, wherever we possibly can. Businessmen in particular are concerned about that because we have overregulated over time. Some would say some of the legislation that has passed is done for job retention purposes. I think everyone is pretty well-meaning when they do that. I'm also concerned about, again, maintaining where we are on taxes in terms of sticking our hands in your pocket to subsidize more and more things out of Harrisburg. I don't think is a very good idea. About 40% of our total budget goes to human services, 40% into education. Human Services has a great number. We are an aging community in Pennsylvania. It has a great number of people eligible for medical benefits due to their age, and that isn't going to change. So we have to be mindful of that while we're trying to run the rest of the state. I look forward to continuing to help local people, local businesses in particular, but everyone else too. And I ask you for your vote in November.
Mr. Cook.
Well, I also want to thank everyone for attending tonight. I want to thank the parties for sponsoring this event. I want to thank the moderators for doing an excellent job, except for with my name. But that's okay. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. As somebody who's new to the political arena, I want to let everybody know that I will pledge to work hard for the citizens of this district and this state. When I was doing a little bit of research, I looked back and found that the last time anyone but a Republican was elected in the 64th district, which was the Venango district prior to 1969, was in 1913. Glenn Donald was elected as a Democrat, and he served until 1916. So that means for the last 100 years, the same party has been in office, mainly due to the gerrymandering in this state. I'm asking you to vote this November 8th for a change. We talked about term limits earlier. Well, I think that the term limit is up for the Republican Party, and we need to have new, fresh ideas. And somebody from another party, whether the Green Party or the Democratic
Green Party, yeah.
So I'm asking you to vote for a change in local government. When we look around, what's been happening hasn't been working. Back in the 60s and the 70s, it did, but today it's not. And Mr. James had talked about all of the committees that he's on. Well, when I talk to some people in Harrisburg, committees mean party loyalty. You get assigned to a committee because you're loyal to the Republican Party or to the Democratic Party if you're assigned to a committee there. I hope that after I'm elected and re-elected, that in 4 years I can come back here and tell you that I'm not serving on any committees. Not that I wouldn't, but I want to say that I'm not serving on any committees because that's party loyalty.
Thank you, everyone, this evening. It's not over. We'd like to thank the candidates for attending this evening and your remarks and answers to the questions.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you very much.
Good job.
Okay.
Thanks, Lee.
Okay.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind vacating the stage, and we're going to have
Oh, so you're kicking us off?
representative running for the 5th District, Harris, bring up the case.
Oh, sure, you got it. No, I'm only teasing you. I'm only totally teasing. Hey, You would not believe how many different.
We'd like everybody to stay.
We expect to get started in just a couple of minutes here, so as soon as we get settled, we'll start.
Good evening, everyone. My apologies for being late. It was a very dark drive, but I managed to not hit a deer on the way up, which was good. Yay. Ironically, when I ran in 2014, the very last event I had was in Venango County, and I hit a deer. So I was trying to not recreate the events of 2014. So successful so far. I still have to get home, but we'll see. So my name is Kara Strano-Taylor. I am running for Congress in the 5th Congressional District. I ran in 2014, and I'm running again in 2016. Some people call me stubborn. I like to say persistent, right? But 6 of one, half dozen of the other. And I was really appreciative of the fact that you reached out so I could come up and talk to the folks here in Venango, and I'm delighted to see the crowd. I mean, it was really nice to see on a rainy Thursday night that people are coming out to engage in their politics. But even more importantly, I like the fellow that's running for the Green Party had a seat at this debate table. We don't see that everywhere, and it matters, right? In our political discourse, we should be hearing from everyone who has an opinion, and certainly everyone who's on the ballot. So I very much appreciate the fact that you gave that opportunity to him. So thank you for that. Okay, so I am more than happy to answer any questions that might be hanging out in this room, but I'm going to give you a brief synopsis of why I'm running, because some of you might have never seen me before, and you're thinking, who is this lady and why is she talking to me? So we'll give you the rundown. I'm a family law attorney. I practice in Brookville, Pennsylvania. I was born and raised in Jefferson County. I've actually lived all but 5 years of my life in the 5th Congressional District. I graduated from Brookville Area High School, well-funded public school at the time. Went to Penn State University, graduated from Penn State with a degree in political science, moved to Washington, D.C., worked for a couple years, realized law school was my calling, went to law school, moved back home, and I opened a law firm with my then husband. Ironically, he and I are no longer married. However, we practiced law together for 6 years after the divorce. I don't think there's a lot of people that can say that. So when I tell people that I'm really good at negotiation and compromise, I mean it. I practice family law, so I have watched attorneys break kids. I know what that looks like. And not only in my own practice, I don't participate in that, but I certainly wasn't going to allow it to happen to my children. So when divorce came to me, we had a conversation. How are we going to do this? And that's what led us to continue working together for a number of years. And it was to the point where my kids would come in the back door, stop and see their dad, stop and see me, and we did what was right by our children. We no longer practice law together because he got remarried, and who runs your business, the ex-wife or the new wife? Let's all agree. So he's now down the street. We just had a case against each other last week, and it's really lovely and amicable. But the reason I share this story with you is because he and I have elevated the expectation of our court when it comes to shared custody. We changed the map. Before we demonstrated what it looks like to be agreeable about where the soccer cleats are or getting to the soccer game or the musical, it was assumed that people couldn't do this well and that it would be a lot of fighting. And we didn't see a lot of shared custody handed out in Jefferson County or Clarion or the counties around us. But after we started demonstrating that it can be done, the expectation heightened. And I think it's better for kids, and I think it's better for families, and I know a number of my judges have thanked me for that because it demonstrates what it looks like to do right by your children. And let's be clear, it's not easy. It's hard, but the payout is worth it. I also represent all the children that come through the foster care system in Jefferson County. And I'm going to just break everybody's heart for a moment, and I'm going to apologize in advance. However, 10 years ago, the majority of the children that came through foster care in Pennsylvania were victims of abuse. Now they're victims of neglect. primarily because of poverty and opioids. So let's just own the fact that the downturn in the economy, the fact that we have a lot of people working 1, 2, 3 jobs, still living under the poverty line, they just don't have enough to get by. And we're seeing more and more children coming to school hungry. We're seeing more and more children coming to school that aren't living in appropriate housing conditions. And then obviously we have the opioid problem. And I know it's plagued Venango County just like it's plagued Elk and Clarion and Jefferson. It is killing us. In every room I walk into, I usually ask, I'm not gonna do it tonight, I don't wanna put anybody on the stand. If anybody in the room knows someone that has been afflicted by this tragedy, and in every room I walk into, practically every hand goes up. Right? We know this is what's happening to our families. Interestingly enough, the only demographic in the Western world whose life expectancy is declining, going down, are white rural Americans with a high school education or less. Think about where you live. That's us. And we're dying from preventable disease. So, we can do something about this on the federal level. And I would argue that any of the efforts that have been made fall short because they talk about treatment, which is good, but no one's willing to have a conversation about where it starts. And we all know it starts with OxyContin, right? Everybody we know that's addicted to heroin got a prescription from a well-meaning doctor, and it led them down this garden path. And I would argue that we should be moving OxyContin to Schedule 1, where it was initially approved to be. It was initially approved for use in end-of-life care. Essentially, you would pass away before you were addicted, right? Palliative care, hospice care, cancer treatment, that's when it was intended to be used. And Purdue Pharma admitted to lying to the public about it having a less than 1% addiction rate when it was actually at 42%. Okay? They were fined $600 million for this, a couple of years of community service. They were rewarded with extended patent protection. And in November of 2015, the Federal Food and Drug Administration approved OxyContin to be prescribed to children 11 to 16. Does that make everybody's gut hurt, right? Congress didn't do a thing about it. Didn't raise a finger. So the reason I'm running this among many, many others, and this all started by me spending an hour with my congressman, and he couldn't answer my questions. There is a lot of work to be done in Washington, D.C. There's a lot of good work that we can do in Washington, D.C. And I have the skills to go and do that work. And Mr. Thompson's been in office for 8 years. He has raised $4.6 million, primarily from corporate PACs, in order to stay in that seat. And I don't think that has served us well. And my intention is to go and spend all of my time serving constituents and reading and proposing legislation and actually doing the work that serves the people that live in my backyard and your backyard. I believe we deserve better. And in all fairness, it's not just Mr. Thompson, it's 435 people that go there and get caught up in this frenzy to raise money to get reelected. I need you to know this. I have a really great life and a good job and 2 young kids, and I serve on my school board and I love my house. I don't need this job forever. That isn't my intention. I want to go and demonstrate what it looks like to spend 100% of my time helping people. It's what I do, and I'm pretty good at it, and I'd like the opportunity to do it on behalf of the 5th Congressional District. So with that, I don't know if it would be okay, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. I'll stay after as well if this isn't the proper forum, but I'm here and happy to answer any questions that anybody might have. So, thank you very much. Thank you.
So we want to thank each of you for taking the time to attend this evening's Candidates Forum. We trust it was informative and will allow you to make an informed decision when casting your vote on November the 8th. We again want to thank Venango College and their student union for working with us to make this evening possible. Remember, your vote is your voice. Have a good evening. Thank you.